Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's someone. Welcome to Delirium Week, and welcome back to another story mix. I did want to drop another mix for you guys on top of things. And of course, we had to do it on a Deliriant, and that's on Dramamine, or dimenhydrinate. And if you don't know, dimenhydrinate is a mix of diphenhydramine and achlorotheophylline, a substance similar to caffeine that's supposed to help with the drowsiness. Because of this, dimenhydrinate trips can be very similar to diphenhydramine. But even with it technically being diphenhydramine, it still shows it can be unique, which you'll see with the stories we got today. And along with me today, we got the homie Vivek.
Hey everyone, I'm Vivek. I'm a fellow trip reporter who likes to focus on sharing level 5 psychedelic experiences, ones that delve deep into the realms of ego death and vivid hallucinations. I was initially inspired to start making trip reports from watching someone that's no one's content, so it's a great honour to be had on the channel. I'll definitely be collabing with him more in the future, and I also plan to get him and all the other Trip Sitter boys on my channel as well, so stay tuned for that. We've got loads of cool ideas up our sleeves for you.
So go check out the bro, his channel link will be down below. But other than that, I do want to know, some of these recordings I have are from back in the day, so the quality will vary, but we're keeping it that way for authenticity. But yeah, I figured we'd do a mix on this, since we won't be having any reports on Dramamine outside of this. But if you guys want to see more of these, you already know, subscribe, like the video, and drop a comment. But without further ado, let's dive right into this.
Feeding my sister coins. When I am under the influence of these substances, dimenhydrinate, diphenhydramine, I experience an entirely new reality. This is not the cool, trippy reality I look for in mushrooms or LSD. It is an entirely believable reality, which I cannot distinguish from the real reality. Things I would never do in reality seem perfectly normal while under the influence of dimenhydrinate or diphenhydramine. I forget where I heard it from, possibly the internet or one of my friends, but I found out that you could trip out after taking excessive doses of over-the-counter Dramamine. So one night after work I was looking for a way to get fucked up, but having just got out of intensive drug rehabilitation, I was subject to a bi-weekly drug test, blood draw, and urine sample, so I couldn't really do any normal drugs. Thus my interest in the abuse of over-the-counter pharmaceuticals had developed. Anyway, after a hard night of work, I started to leave. It was roughly around 3 a.m. and I was looking to get fucked up. I dropped into the local store and picked up a box of 24 orange chewable Dramamine tablets along with the usual 2 boxes of Coricidin that I routinely acquired. I arrived at home around 3:30 a.m. and I immediately crunched up all 24 Dramamine tablets, which had a pretty decent taste when down with grape soda. I then waited for the effects to kick in. I'm not sure why, but it took about 2 hours for anything noticeable to happen. My memory is extremely shoddy, but here's what happened according to what I remember during the trip and after, as well as my mother, brother, and sister said happened. 2 hours in, I started talking to people that weren't present. I remember seeing a girl that I recently had a relationship with, Tina. I thought Tina was really in my house, and I kept asking her to go downstairs with me, as I was in my room upstairs at the time, but every time I went to grab her hand or touch her, she would vanish. This seemed perfectly normal to me at the time, and I did not question the laws of science when someone completely vanished in front of my eyes. 2 hours 30 minutes in, I was in my room and I started thinking about Great Times, a place that has jungle gyms for kids and ball pits, arcade games, etc. Immediately after thinking about this place, it seemed like my room had transformed into the main lobby of Great Times. My dresser had turned into a coin-changing machine, and the hallway turned into a ball pit. I remember seeing a bunch of children having a great time there. At this point, my sister came into my room after hearing me yell and laugh, and I asked her if she would want to play Legos with me. I do not know why this popped into my mind, but it seemed perfectly normal. My sister, 12 years old, didn't know I was obviously intoxicated and decided she would like to play Legos with me when I asked her. She got the Legos out and apparently I reached for the change on my dresser and started feeding her coins as she was laughing. It seemed completely normal. I remember putting coins in my sister's mouth as she laughed at me, thinking I was trying to be funny. My memory fades out at that point. 3 hours in, I remember changing from my work clothes to 2 pairs of boxers, 3 socks on each feet, blue jeans, a red t-shirt, a gray sweatshirt, and a winter coat. I told my sister I was going to play in the snow. It was in the month of April, by the way, and that she should come out with me. I got up to go to my door when I completely forgot what the hell I was doing. I didn't try to remember what I was doing, I just simply went on to something else. 3 hours 30 minutes in. I went back to my bed and sat down. My jeans have a hole in the knees, the kind of vintage look I like to purchase when I shop. All of a sudden, I remember yelling that there was a huge beetle running around in my jeans and that it was trying to get out. After yelling this, I ran to the bathroom and pulled a package of Band-Aids from the medicine cabinet. I then tried to trap the beetle in my pants by putting Band-Aids on my jeans to cover up the hole. Again, this all seemed completely normal to me. 4 hours in. I don't remember much after that. However, this was the time my mom woke up and came to see what all the noise was. Oh boy, my mom immediately knew I was fucked up beyond belief and tried to get me to lay down. I remember telling her that I am due fine, due for you, and I'm fine, and many other incoherent babblings to that effect. I remember her putting me in my bed, and I would try to get back up, but it was very hard because it seemed I was being pulled down, the increased gravity effect, and then my mom left my room to do something. 4 hours 30 minutes in. For some reason, I decide I need a shower, and I go into my bathroom, turn on the shower, and jump in with all the heaps of clothing I was wearing, and just sit there. My mom comes in and takes me out the shower and threatens to take me back to the rehabilitation center. Upon hearing that, I panic and run to my room, saying incoherent things that conveyed my opposition to the rehab center. After that, my mom got me to lay in bed. She had to tell me weird lies she said trick me into laying down, and finally fell asleep. I can only imagine the things that I did I cannot remember while under the influence of Dramamine. It was ultimately entertaining and fun, and I did get fucked up for less than $10 on legal pharmaceuticals.
We all decide to take a walk outside. It was a cold fall night, so we all start layering warm clothes. I tell H and L to wait for me, because I had to go to the bathroom first. I walk into the bathroom and sit on the toilet. I immediately forgot what I was there for. I looked around. I sat for a couple minutes. I was also chewing gum at the time, and I found it very difficult to multitask. I began to pee, but forgot I was chewing gum, and it fell out of my mouth. I had to stop what I was doing, pop the gum back into my mouth, and finish peeing. This was a difficult excursion. T plus 40 minutes. We're finally outside. This is where I start experiencing my first open eye visuals. We walked down L's driveway and I looked up the street. I saw 2 grown men on children's bikes, barreling down the street. They were wearing business suits, the ties flapping wildly behind them. I shouted to H and L, "Bicyclists! Watch for the bicyclists!" Half laughing, half serious. I looked at H and she just laughed. This was very, very confusing. I looked back up the street. The cyclists were gone. I wasn't really noticing the drunken stumble feeling anymore, although I'm sure it was there. T plus 55 minutes. We walked around the block a few times. I wasn't seeing many visuals and I didn't feel really messed up, but I'm sure by then I was. L was also feeling strong effects at this point too. At one point L shouted, "Cops!" I forgot how messed up I was, and I actually believed that there were cops coming after us. My first instinct was to run. I felt like I was running faster than I ever had before. For some reason, sober H ran with us too. Trying to evade the cops coming after us, I took a sharp right into what I thought was Elle's backyard. It turned out it was her neighbour's yard. Convinced it was Elle's though, I started trudging through the piles of leaves and rocks looking for the door. A couple minutes later, Elle came into the neighbour's yard and said, "Hey, this house is over here, let's go." I felt extreme relief, knowing I didn't have to stomp through the yard alone, looking for the door anymore. I grabbed Elle's hand. T plus 1 hour and 30 minutes. I have no idea what we did for a half-hour period or so after getting to Elle's house. I do recall us all going outside for a smoke. I I really didn't comprehend that I was smoking, but I did anyway. My cigarette just sort of dangled between my fingers and ended up taking only about 2 drags before it was down to the butt. With H's help, I lit up another. I walked inside the house and H shouted, "Hey, no smoking in the house." Without responding, I stuck my arm out the door but kept my body inside the house. I thought I was so clever for coming up with this, though I'm sure I looked ridiculous. All I recall other than this was Elle shouting, "Kitty!" Her cat Kitty was inside asleep. T plus 1 hour and 45 to 4 hours. We went into Elle's room and I laid down on the bed. Elle was on the floor and H sat on the edge of the bed. At this point I just sort of drifted into a dreamlike state. Hours drifted by, but time was gone. I was having the most vivid hallucinations ever, and I honestly thought the things I was seeing were real. I was talking to myself too. Elle was gone into a dream state too, but H listened to everything I said. I remember having told her in detail how I had to re-vacuum the floor 6 times and how the dishwashers are creepy. Several times I'd begin a sentence, then forget what I was talking about. I'd stare blankly for a couple minutes, then remember what I had started to say several minutes before. Every time this happened, H would just say, "What are you talking about?" and giggle furiously. This was almost frustrating. Why doesn't she know what I'm talking about? Am I speaking gibberish or something? I don't get it, I often found myself thinking. Perhaps the most vivid of hallucinations occurred when I saw a phone appear in front of me. It was floating and ringing. I reached out and answered it. It was my mum. I had a good 5-minute conversation with her. It felt so real. She explained how she would pick me up the next morning and we'd go run errands. When I hung the phone up, it disappeared. I blinked numerous times and ran my hands across the bed looking for it, figuring I had dropped it. I asked H to help me find it and she just raised an eyebrow. I looked away and decided to stand on the bed. Talking to no one in particular, I inquired, "Where'd everyone go? The dishwashers were here a second ago." There I was, going on about dishwashers again. Soon after, my eyes came in contact with my hands. My hands! I could see each individual cell. I began counting them, losing count after about 7 or so. I had to show Elle, who was still laying on the floor looking at the ceiling. I believe our brief conversation went like this. "Elle, look at your hands. Look at the cells." "There are baby spiders," she replied. "No, look at your cells. You can count them," I explained again. "Whoa, radiator," was her only response. I laid next to Elle and looked at the ceiling to see what she was going on about. The radiator was sliding around on the ceiling, forward, backward, around, as if it was teasing me. I shouted H to fix the fucking radiator, but little did I know, H had left the room and gone to bed quite some time ago. T plus 4 hours and 30 minutes, ? Time was still lost. I had no idea what else I had been doing during these hours after H went to bed and was no longer accounting for my actions. I'm assuming I just sat on the bed, having conversations with people that weren't really there. I'm sure if I was in this mental state out in public, people would think I was a schizophrenic crack whore. I do remember closing my eyes at one point and picturing the Dean of Discipline from my school appearing at Elle's house in her pyjamas and a sweatshirt, knocking on the door because she knew what we did. This seemed very real, and for a 5-minute period I really did think the Dean of Discipline was waiting outside the door for us. I tried to remain quiet. The anxious feelings subsided quickly. T plus 5 hours, ? Elle's mum, who had been working the late shift, arrived home. As stated at the beginning of this account, we had carelessly tossed aside the empty pill sleeves, so it came as no surprise that Elle's mum stormed upstairs, gripping the sleeves with a confused look. Elle managed to tell her mum that she had found the pill sleeves sitting in the backyard and just threw them away. But Elle's mum wasn't stupid. She asked Elle why she was shaking so bad. Apparently the shaking feeling we experienced at the beginning of the trip never subsided, and why her pupils were so big. Fucked up and confused, Elle came clean. Elle's mum then approached me and shook the empty sleeves in my face. "And how many did you take?" she snarled. Still tripping hard, the room suddenly transformed into a quiz show-like setting. I raised my finger and said, almost with a smile, 18 pills as well, missus. T plus 5 hours and 20 minutes. Elle's mum told me to call my parents. I didn't realise how screwed up I was until I actually tried to hold a conversation with my own mother. I was stuttering, forgetting what I was saying. All I managed to say was, "Mum, some shit went down at M's house. You have to come over now." She asked me why I wasn't at Elle's house. I realised my mistake and corrected myself. "Mum, I'm at Elle's house and you need to come over now." She asked me what happened and I just kept telling her it was a long story and I'd tell her when she got to Elle's. Needless to say, my mother was confused. I'd just woken up in the middle of the night telling her to come pick me up. I handed the phone to Elle's mum and she finished talking to my mum. I heard the word overdose several times. I paid no mind. When I made my way up to Elle's room, she was furiously ripping drug posters off the wall, hiding things, ripping things apart. All I could manage to say was, "Oh shit." But for some reason, I didn't feel scared or anxious that we had just gotten caught. I don't think I fully grasped the situation. T plus 5 hours and 50 minutes. When my parents arrived, we all sat down at Elle's kitchen table. Our parents discussed whether to take us to the hospital or not, and decided against it since the pills had probably fully absorbed into our systems anyway. My parents were trying to talk to me, but was completely zoned out. Numerous times I tried to text my other friends, "Oh shit, we got caught." I typed the whole message and looked down to see I wasn't even holding my phone. My parents would ask me things and I'd just stare blankly. Elle later told me she had been watching TV in her water glass the whole time, until the news came on and she turned it off. All of us sat at the kitchen table for a good hour or so, our parents just watching us as if we were going to drop dead. T plus 6 hours and 45 minutes. When my parents decided to take me home, I almost felt sober, but I was far from it. Whilst walking to the car, I looked across the street at some large oak trees, which I realised several weeks later were not there to begin with. I squinted and saw my friend Kay scurry out from behind the trees. For some reason I said, "Good, she's escaped the wrath." My mum just looked at me as if she was about to cry. The car ride home was an awkward and long one. 10 minutes into it I broke the silence with a spastic yak noise. I believe this was due to a hallucination of an animal walking in front of the car, and yak was the first animal I could think of. Upon arriving home, I went straight into my bedroom and collapsed onto my bed. I've no idea how long I laid there before falling asleep. When I did finally fall asleep, it was a deep, deep sleep, interrupted occasionally by lucid dreams. When I woke up the next morning, I felt sober, but shitty. It wasn't really a hangover feeling, but it was something wrong. I walked to the door and attempted to open it. It felt like my hand was sinking through the door. It had been a good 15 hours since ingestion and I was still not completely back to normal. Overall, I think the Dramamine experience was totally stupid. It seemed fun at the time, but it left me so totally inept and incapable of doing anything it's ridiculous. Since the experience, I've had a friend, Kay, the one who I previously described as scurrying out from behind an oak tree, go to the hospital from a Dramamine overdose, 1200 milligrams. Of all the drugs I've had experiences with, Dramamine is definitely the one that left me the most out of it. It is in no way a social drug, and if I had to put it in a category, I'd describe it as a dissociative hallucinogen, with periods of time similar to a ketamine K-hole and a heavy mushroom trip.
Did I throw a party? It was last summer. I just broke up with my girlfriend of 11 months and I was pissed. I had just left some campgrounds after bitching at her and I went to my friend Steve's house and another friend Jay was there. Jay told me he wanted me to try Super Skittles, aka DXM, and that's what I went there to do. When I arrived, I lit up a cigarette and was getting really excited, and then he told me he couldn't get the DXM. Instead, he pulls out a bottle of Equate Motion Sickness Dramamine. He said I should take 8 and I'll trip hardcore. That night I took 10, and that's when it all started. A couple of months later, still last summer, I'd gotten hooked on this shit. Dramamine was what I literally did every night. I found out how easy of a tolerance it is to build up on this shit. One night I had a rough time at work and for some reason didn't do Dramamine that night before. Weird at the time. I had taken like 20 a couple of nights before and didn't feel a thing. Either that or I fell asleep before anything actually started. But usually I'll wake up itching and shit, but I didn't do it that night. So I thought I wanted to trip balls. So I pulled out a bottle out from in between the mattress and box spring, opened it up and poured out a whole bunch. I divided it up into 10 groups of 10. I had 3 groups of 10, and after that I only had 5 left. I thought I could do 16 twice, but I didn't really trip last time and wanted enough left over for another trip. So instead I just said fuck it. Instead I took all fucking 35. Crazy shit, and I advise no one to do this. Even though I had a pretty high tolerance for this shit, I had no clue what I had just done. This night was the craziest night of my life. After about 20 minutes, this shit kicks in fast for me. I was feeling it. Just mild high. Mostly noticed when I would walk around or just move. A very heavy feeling, and my depth perception was way off. I had put a timer on my TV to turn it off in 2 hours, I thought, but I only actually set it to 1. By this time, I was totally fucked. Hallucinations everywhere. I saw shadows, things that weren't there, shit like that. My TV turned off and my room was pitch black. I had forgotten where I was when the TV turned off and I couldn't see shit. I got off what I thought was my bed, walked around for probably 15 minutes before I finally found my door. Now my room isn't that small by any means, but it isn't huge either, probably a 12 by 14 foot room. Anyway, when I opened my door, I walked out into our recreational room upstairs, it's like a living room, and saw loads of my friends. Wow, I thought, did I throw a party? My friend Steve, who I brought up in the beginning of this report, was sitting on my steps. I went over and sat down next to him and talked for a little. I really had to piss, so I told him I'd be right back. I walked past my sister's room. She came out and asked me who I was talking to. I told her Steve and pointed by the stairs. She said, "Steve who?" I looked and he was gone. So was everybody else. I went into the bathroom and for some reason tried to fit my head through the shower doors. There was maybe an inch of space, but I thought it would fit. All of a sudden I slammed my head in the shower doors and just stopped everything and stared. My sister came into the bathroom because I had never shut the door and asked what the hell I was doing. I told her I was taking a piss and kicked her out and closed the door. I finally got done pissing after a long ass time and went back out in my recreational room. Everybody that was there before was there again, plus more people. People I didn't even know were there. I talked to quite a few people. I even started weightlifting with one of my friends at fucking 1 in the morning. I knew the time because I looked at the clock. My sister went downstairs because I was scaring the shit out of her, and she got my grandma. I lived with my grandparents, by the way. My grams came upstairs and caught me just as I was going back into my room. I was standing right in front of my door, leaning on our entertainment center, and all of a sudden I moved out of the way and said, "Go ahead." My grams looked at me like I was crazy, which is when I figured out what I had just done. I realized I thought there was a line of people behind me, and I knew I was going to be standing there talking for a while, so I was going to let them go past me. My grams told me to go downstairs to the family room, and she woke up my gramps. She told him what had been going on. Then she proceeded to tell me earlier that night I went into the kitchen, pulled out a bunch of pots and pans, put them on the stove, turned on all the burners, filled up a cup of water, and was about to pour the water all over the top of the stove. She stopped me and took me back to my room. I have absolutely no recollection of any of that. I don't remember shit. Anyway, while I was sitting on the couch, both parents staring at me and asking me what was going on, I started to dig around in the couch. I got off and looked under the couch and pulled the cushions out and everything. My grandma yelled my name and got my attention. She asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was looking for my keys because I was going to leave. And that's why I thought I was downstairs. They kept threatening me to taking me to the hospital over and over, so I gave in. Just told them to take me. Fuck it. I was sick of listening to them. I think that night was the craziest thing I did. On the way there, I kept leaning forward to the front seat of our van and talked to my sister. My grandparents told me to sit back because she wasn't there. I sat back and saw her in the back seat and kept talking to her. They kept asking me who I was talking to, and I told them Ashley, my sister. I don't remember much after that. I remember sitting in a hospital bed, and then they put an IV in my left hand. Damn, that fucking shit hurt. My grams later told me I almost broke her hand because I was squeezing it too hard, and my gramps told me the same thing. Anyway, the next thing I remember, I'm sitting in a new hospital bed in another room on the other side of the hospital, and there were 2 beds in my room divided by a huge curtain that you can open and close. I kept seeing little kids run to my side of the curtain and getting toys, and they threw it onto my side, and then they sped off to the other side of the curtain. Unfortunately, my grandparents were standing right there and asked me what I was doing because my body had a huge jerk, and I told them it was because I couldn't fall asleep, I think. My parents left and went on home while the doctors checked up on me every 2 hours to check my blood pressure and my heartbeat and other stuff. One time I woke up in the hospital bed and there was a priest sitting on a chair next to my bed. I looked at him and said, "No way." I was still fucked up and thought "no way" to myself in my head, but it turned out the priest heard me and started talking. And that's about what happened. It was a really fucking crazy ass experience. Of course, however, I still do Dramamine once in a while, but I'll probably never go past 20 pills.
Erowid note. The dose described in this report is very high, potentially beyond Erowid's heavy range, and could pose serious health risks or result in unwanted extreme effects. Sometimes extremely high doses reported are errors rather than actual doses used. Of all the experiences I've had with drugs, there is one I will never ever forget. My parents are completely against drugs and underage drinking, so that made this experience even more thrilling. Going back a couple years, when popping pills was a normal thing for me, I would take Dramamine most nights for the entire summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school. The night before this unforgettable night, I had taken 17 pills, or 850 milligrams, and didn't even get a buzz because I had built my tolerance up so much. So the next night, after getting home from a busy night of work, I pulled out my bottle of Dramamine and poured the pills out onto my bed. Counting them in piles of 15, I had a total of 35 pills. Considering the night before and not even getting a buzz, I decided to take all 35. Let the fun begin. After about 45 minutes, the pills had fully kicked in, or so I thought. A very heavy feeling overcame my entire body. My limbs felt at least 50 pounds heavier, but it didn't feel as if I was working my muscles any harder than normal. I had all the lights off in my room, blinds open to let in the moonlight, TV on. I do that because it creates more shadows in my room. As a result, more things to look at, more things to make the trip more interesting. Looking at myself in the mirror was extremely hard, because I couldn't really comprehend what I was looking at. My room has 2 closets with 4 mirror doors. I knew it was me in my room, but I didn't really understand it. Yet I would take many glances or sometimes just stare for minutes. Watching TV was tough because I would drift off quite a bit and the TV would seem to disappear if I stared at it long enough. That would confuse the hell out of me and I would actually look for it. Dark figures would appear out of the corners of my room and walk towards me, but disappear as soon as they got too close. Heads that looked like shadows would pop up from the foot of my bed and look at me for a second and then duck back down. As soon as one figure disappeared, another one replaced it. My first really crazy hallucination happened while I was lying in bed. I was watching Conan and all of a sudden I was back at work chopping up an onion. I worked at a bar and restaurant at the time. I looked up in the bar to see who was all there. Then I dropped the knife and the onion. I freaked out and searched all over my bed, inside and out, underneath and above, for this damn onion. Then I realised I wasn't at work. There was no knife and no onion, and I was fucked up. Anyway, now the fun starts. I had to take a piss really bad. I stood up out of my bed fairly slowly because I was so messed up. I didn't realise how messed up I was until this point. The heavy feeling was so intense and so hard to control at first, but taking my time and getting used to things when the situation changed seemed to help me quite a bit. My depth perception was really fucked up. Sometimes it was almost as if I was cross-eyed, but other times things seemed so far away. I slowly made it to my door by holding on to things like my bed, dresser, bookshelf, etc. I opened my door, looked out into the rec room of my parents upstairs and couldn't believe I wasn't out there earlier. I must have thrown a party. Shit, I completely forgot. All my friends were there. Why wasn't I? I mean, this is my house. So I mingled through literally crowds of people, said hi to as many of them as I recognised. You know, the usual. I'm a very friendly guy, that's what I do. Everything was going great until she got involved. My sister came out of her room because she heard all the commotion and popped the biggest question of all time. Bigger than the marriage question. She asked me who I was talking to. I was stunned. She knows who I hang out with? What the fuck? So anyway, I told her who, and all of a sudden I got really confused. As if I knew what was coming, but at the same time I didn't. There's nobody here. Oh shit, the Dramamine. I'd completely forgotten I took them damn pills, and didn't even realise I was hallucinating. Then I remembered why I left my room in the first place. I had to drain the sausage. I went and did my business, and when I came out of the bathroom everybody was there again. But once again I thought it was all real. That part of the story goes on for a little while longer until I completely scared the shit out of my sister and she went and got my parents. They came upstairs to figure out what was wrong. Holding a conversation at this time was impossible. I tried to make sure I stuck with one-word answers to try and save my ass, yet all I could really think of was one-word answers. And standing still and balancing was even harder. I always had to lean against something. I felt so stupid, like I was just born and learning everything for the first time again. My mum was talking to me right outside of my doorway. For some reason I got this thought in my head that I was standing in a line and the line wouldn't move at all unless if I did, so I kindly stepped aside and told the people behind me to go ahead. My mum freaked out and helped me down the stairs and into the living room where they were watching TV. She sat me on the couch and both of them started hounding me with all these questions, mainly about what I was on. I kept telling them, nothing, but that wouldn't slide for long. I got up and tore all the cushions from each couch and threw them on the floor. I looked under the couch and everything. My parents asked me what I was looking for and I told them my keys because I was leaving. They said I wasn't going anywhere, and that's not why I was downstairs. Right then and there I knew they knew. 100%. They freaked out and rushed me to the hospital immediately. On the way there I was talking to my sister in the back seat of their van, but she was actually at home sleeping in her bed. At the hospital I had more hallucinations. Still a heavy feeling, etc. A couple of days later I talked to my parents about it and they informed me I came downstairs that night and pulled out all the pots and pans and set them on the counter on the island, not on the stove. I turned around and turned all the burners on, filled up a cup with water, and my parents stopped me just before I put the fire out on the stove. I wouldn't consider this a bad trip, only because I didn't need to be hospitalised. I just needed to wait until I came down from the high. I submitted this because I wanted people to know my experience with this drug. I'm just throwing it out there for people, so take it or leave it.
Like mushrooms, but better. Okay, this was one of the most weird and unforgettable experiences of my life. First off, I bought a bottle of no-name gravel from the local pharmacy. 50 pills at 50 milligrams apiece. Me and a friend wanted to trip out hardcore, so we each downed 17 pills. I remember the wait for it to kick in was a little bit frustrating, but it paid off. After about an hour, I noticed that when I would move my head, I couldn't really feel it, but I knew it was turning. I felt really lightheaded, but at the same time, I had to try to keep my head up because it was so heavy. Kinda weird, but that's how it was. I started to get a little worked up and decided to go hop in the shower to mellow out a bit. While in the shower, I kept seeing the shower curtain twitching a lot, almost like bubbles were inflating out of it, then quickly deflating, sort of like a heartbeat. I was very amused at this, but could not tell if it was real or a hallucination. I went and looked really close to it, and it still did the same thing. I touched, but it stopped. But the minute I let go, it started again. After that, I got out of the shower and ran downstairs, but found it incredibly hard to run. My feet were so heavy, but felt so light that I could walk on air. I had barely enough balance to keep me standing, so I laid down on my bed. Things started to get a little bit intense for me, so I buried my head into my pillows. I remember that even though I was awake, I could dream with my eyes open. I could stare off to the point that all I saw was black. I kept awakening from these dreams and asking my friend where certain items that I dreamt about were. My short-term memory was gone, none whatsoever. I would start a sentence, and around the second word, I'd forget what I was going to say and what I had just said. If I stared at the wall, I would see a clear smoke-like substance spread all over the place. Looked sort of like a creature from the movie Predator. I remember when I started to come down that I got extremely itchy and thought spiders were crawling all over me, but I was laughing a lot at the stupidity it had induced to me. I also remember hearing voices from upstairs, even though there was no one home. All in all, it was a great experience. I would recommend it, but beware. Read into it first and make sure you are mentally strong enough to handle it. I would easily classify this drug in the same category as mushrooms. It is a lot similar to mushrooms, but for me, more hallucinations. I would definitely do this again, perhaps at a stronger dose. Hospitalization following extremely high dose. My name is Patsy. I am a public access television producer and videographer in Texas. Last Friday on 6/1/07, I learned about your website, the hard way. I found out because my son called me about 8:30 p.m. that my 16-year-old son, Ellie, was acting strange and incoherent. My son, who worked all day, got home at about 8 p.m. to find him. I rushed home, which took about 25 minutes, and Alex said to me, "Look, Mom, watch this." He began to ask Ellie questions. Ellie was giving random answers. His eyes appeared to be dilated, and he had a wide-eyed look. His hands were shaking, so I knew he was probably having some sort of anxiety attack and that his heart rate had to be very high. He walked around from one place to another, saying he was going to make something to eat or that he had to pee, but he would only take a few steps and then go in another direction. I can see his mind was jumping around like a bouncing ball. My son Alex then showed me this document, the report which follows. I did not read past I was able to get 700 milligrams of the shit, and realized I needed to get him to a hospital fast. Luckily, he was cooperative when we told him we were taking him to play video games. He kept complaining that he needed to pee but could not. I emailed the Word document to myself and we sped to a hospital. I cannot tell you how terrified I was. I knew that this was bad because he was totally incoherent and definitely seeing things. He would say things randomly as if someone was talking to him. We would ask him questions to try and make him focus on us and not whatever it was he was seeing. He would yell things out during the drive to the hospital, such as, "Look at those mushrooms," and lean forward from the back seat as if what he was seeing was in the car. He also yelled out when we passed a familiar grocery store, "Look at Pikachu!" He appeared to be seeing characters from video games, but would also see things that scared him, because he would talk about something he saw and say, "That's scary." Thank God he documented what he did, because I would have not have had any idea. The doctor at the ER said it was too late to try to give him activated charcoal to absorb the drug, so they transferred him to the intensive care unit at a pediatric hospital. There, they stuck long tubes down his nose and down into his stomach and gave him some kind of medicine so he could pass the Dramamine. I am not a doctor, so I do not know the purpose of the tubes. They gave him fluids through an IV. The problem was he could not go to the bathroom. His heart rate was up to 140 beats per minute and his blood pressure was high, causing him to become hypertensive, which could lead to a heart attack. It took until about 3 a.m. for his heart rate to stabilize and his blood pressure to start to come down. He was in that dangerous state for about 15 hours. He started the drug at 1:30 p.m., way too much for the body to take. We later searched his room and found a gun that we own. Luckily, I had emptied the clips so there were no bullets in it. He pulled through and did not lose any organs, such as a kidney or liver, and did not go into convulsions. While I was at the first ER, I had my laptop with me, so I turned on the camera to record what was happening. The reason I decided to do that was because I know that most people do not remember what was going on when they overdose on something and can only listen to the hearsay of people telling them how they were acting or the danger they were in. I want to make sure he not only remembers, but relives it. I will be working on that video and so he can see it and possibly post it to some of the websites I have as a warning. A quick break. No one here. She did leave a link in this report actually, but it actually turns out the videos aren't no longer available, but I'm leaving it in the description below if you're still interested because it's kind of like still part of the story. It's still a website, a blog. You can go check it out if you want to. I have to also tell you that although I believe in freedom of speech, I do also believe that minors need to be protected from misinformation. I read what your website states about Dramamine, and I believe it is definitely misleading and can cause irreparable harm to someone not smart enough to question what they read. I imagine that if someone lost a loved one to this drug, they may not be aware of your website and be able to post the information. But this family of drugs is definitely very dangerous and toxic to the body, possibly causing organ failure, heart attack, convulsions, and choking on vomit, not to mention backing up into the lungs, causing death. You should have much bigger precaution messages in big red letters for the stuff you post. Alright, no one here again. If you're really confused about what she's talking about or what website this is she's referencing Erowid, and keep in mind this was made back in 2007, the experience here or when it was posted, and I'm not sure if Erowid just wasn't on their shit at the time, because she did say misinformation. Maybe that was the case. I'm not sure, or it could be more of a warning. Why isn't maybe at the time Erowid wasn't as cautionary as they are now. For this trip report, they do have a warning sign in here, and maybe she was getting on about that. So I just wanted to clarify what she was kind of triggered about there. I can tell you this stuff was a horrible experience for all of my family. They were all affected as well, and my family all across the country were calling to check on us. I hope this is the last time I have to contact you about something someone read on your website that adversely affected someone. The report following is exactly how my son typed it. It has not been altered. You can see his mind going towards the end of the document. Friday, June 1st, 2007, 1:32 p.m. It is 1:32. I'm here at home with a day to kill, and I've read reports on Erowid.org about dimenhydrinate, one of the active ingredients in Dramamine, a common over-the-counter anti-motion sickness pill. So letting curiosity getting the best of me, I've decided to go to the local Walmart and pick a bottle of it. For only $3.72, I was able to get 700 milligrams of the shit and ready to ingest them all, as it takes large amounts to cause auditory and visual hallucinations. When I got home, I decided to take 6, 50 milligrams each, at 1:20 p.m. eat some tacos, and down the other 6 after I've eaten, because having a stomach full of pills without any buffer between them will probably make my stomach very uncomfortable. I plan to record every now and then the effects being taken toll on my body, because as I've read in the reports, amnesia usually follows the day after. Nothing to do now but wait and see what happens. 2:02 p.m. I've been sitting here at my computer playing spades, and I can already feel the Dramamine kicking in, because my body is starting to feel tired. My short-term memory is also being affected, because I cannot remember things that I'm trying to do, and I find it hard to concentrate. Also, my body feels very light, like when I smoke Dro. 2:15 p.m. I just went to the restroom, and I'm starting to hallucinate. The cabinets under my sink started to pulsate, and I'm seeing designs on the wall that I know are fragments of my imagination. I'm going to go back to the computer and wait this thing out. 2:37 p.m. I'm sitting at my computer looking at the kitchen floor, and it seems to be moving, and I'm seeing something transparent slide across the floor, in and out of the carpets and in the fridge. Also, I'm starting to get a warm sensation through my body, like when I've taken painkillers, such as acetaminophen. 2:55 p.m. My body is very drowsy right now, and I feel like going to bed, but I know if I want to get my money's worth, I have to stay up and awake. 5:54 p.m. Being unsatisfied with the first dosage, I've decided to get more. I got 2 more bottles, 1,200 milligrams, and just downed them with soda. Surely this will be a crazy trip, because altogether I've ingested 1,800 milligrams. 6:39 p.m. I have been sitting at my computer waiting for the trip, and so the speakers to my compute are walking, and I